Good morning. I'm Bill Daughtry. Welcome to another edition of New York Sports and Beyond on 98.7 ESPN, New York Sports and Beyond, our weekly public affairs program where our goal is to entertain, enlighten, and expose you to information that can lead to positive change in your life. I think we accomplish all three with today's show. David Kim, he's the founder of an organization called C2 Education. He's helping high school kids get ready for those SAT and ACT tests, which, of course, leads them down the road of college admission. Bill Daughtry on New York Sports and Beyond with David Kim. He is the founder of an organization called C2 Education. The website is C2educate.com. He helps high schoolers get those desirable scores on SAT and ACT tests. Oh, where were you 40 years ago, David Kim? SAT test coming up, by the way, on November 5th. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing great. So what was it that led you to create C2 Education?
Well, it's really to help kids get into the best college that they can. I mean, there's so many choices that are out there. I mean, there's over 4,000 schools, and so just being able to navigate that process and helping kids find the right fit was the real impetus for us to start C2.
I mentioned SATs on October 5th. ACTs are even sooner, October 22nd. Full disclosure here, I did pretty well on my ACTs 40-something years ago, but not so well on the SAT. Actually, I fell asleep on a Saturday morning. Now, I understand these tests have changed tremendously over the years. What are some of the more recent changes that kids and parents need to know in preparation?
Yeah, so the SAT, the scoring has changed. There was a 2,400 scoring last year. Perfect score now is 1,600. They've also gotten rid of any penalties for wrong answers. So like on the ACT, if you can just guess a few times, you're not going to get penalized for it. The number of answer choices went down from 5 to 4, so your odds of guessing have also improved. And the other big thing on the SAT, the two other big things is that SAT, the calculator used to be allowed on the entire part of the math test. Now it's only allowed on part of the test. And the writing essay is now completely optional as opposed to being mandatory.
Wow, that's two huge changes because I remember there was nothing optional about the writing portion, and we couldn't use calculators back then. We had to figure this thing all out. Talking with David Kim, he's the founder of C2 Education, helping high school kids get those desirable scores on SAT and ACT scores. Now, I'm curious, in addition to these admissions tests, and we'll try and pin down what's best for each student, but what are some of the extracurricular activities that college admissions people look at when they are sizing you up as a candidate for their school?
Well, it used to be, I'd say 10 years ago that the schools were looking for well-rounded students. These days, they're really looking for a student who has a very strong passion and a very strong set of expertise in a certain area. So whether it's academics, it could be like robotics, it could be in math or chemistry, it could be in the arts like music or theater, or it could even be in sports, whether it's football, basketball, or baseball.
So, I mean, if you're doing anything related to the STEM curricular from a extracurricular standpoint, you're pretty much a slam dunk.
Absolutely. They're looking for a lot of students these days who have great expertise like in robotics and computer programming, and have really devoted a lot of time to it. That's the biggest thing that schools are looking for is, what's the amount of time and passion and enthusiasm you show in a certain area.
Talking with David Kim, the founder of C2 Education. Their website is C2educate.com. David, my experience with young college folks is different in that a lot of people don't understand there is the academic world in college and then there is the sports world in college, and rarely do the twain meet, but there are some schools that find a way to meld the athletics and the academics in a non-scholarship kind of manner, I guess I want to say here. What are some of those schools? What are some of those schools that kids should look at if they have an interest in both?
Yeah, there's definitely been, obviously, schools like Stanford and Notre Dame that have always maintained high academic standards. And a lot of the Ivy League schools have also done so as well. They've had a very large endowment, which has allowed them to get very aggressive with financial aid. And so families for a lot of the Ivy League schools, for example, if you're making less than $65,000, your kid pays nothing, even though it's not an athletic scholarship. If you fall within that band, they get very aggressive, and if you're between 65 and 150,000, you pay no more than 10% of your family's income. So you could be paying as low as $2,000-$3,000 to get an education, like at a Harvard, Yale, or Princeton.
Now, you mentioned Harvard, you mentioned Yale, you mentioned Princeton, all Ivy League schools. What the heck? We could throw Columbia in there. Those schools aren't necessarily in the business of giving out athletic scholarships, are they?
They're not, but they've really used a lot of the rules of financial aid to their advantage these days. Harvard lately has been called the Kentucky on the Charles. Obviously, it's built a pretty phenomenal basketball program there and an Ivy League football program of late. And you've seen some of those players even get drafted.
Yeah, we've got two guys in New York right now, Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jeremy Lin, both from Harvard. And I know Lin was. I'm not so sure if Fitzpatrick graduated, but what the heck, we'll throw him in there too. How surprised are you at their success on the pro level coming from where they came from?
It's funny. So a lot of students kind of ride, the players, when I was a student, that it's just Ivy League football, and obviously get a lot of that criticism, in the papers as well. But I think of late, with more press coverage, especially with these teams, kind of showing up at like the NCAA tournament and going, beyond the first round and getting a little bit more press. They've definitely set, I think, a precedent for more players to be looked at. And even before Fitzpatrick, when I went to Harvard, Matt Burke, who was the all-pro center for the Vikings and Ravens, I get to watch him play. And so you always see a handful of guys that really, go beyond the expectations that most people might normally have about Ivy League athletics.
Are the challenges different for athletes at Ivy League schools?
I would say it's a little bit more so because of the emphasis on academics. The notion of a student athlete is still very real, in Ivy League institutions. And so, like many athletes at other, kind of Division I schools that are more well known, kids still have to go to, 6 a.m., 7 a.m. practice. They got to go to class afterwards. They got to go lift weights, right after lunch. Then they got to go to class again, and they got to go back to practice again. They're sacrificing their weekends and whatnot, and they're getting obviously, less love from the student body in terms of what they do, as well as less leniency even from their professors, on some of the academic work, and so they're really being forced to balance those things. I would say even more so, and I have the utmost respect for any of my classmates or people that I knew that were balancing both athletics with the academic rigor. The amount of time they had to manage and sacrifice on sleep is tremendous.
So, David Kim, are the top colleges in the country now, are they easier to get into, or is it getting more difficult?
It's getting more difficult across the board. So any school that's like in the top 50, top 100 of that U.S. News World Report, your top state schools, your top out-of-state schools, it's just gotten more and more competitive. Kids are becoming more singularly skilled at certain things. You see it not only in academics, you see it in, things like, STEM areas and robotics or computer programming. You see it in the arts. You even see it in sports. The days of a three-sport athlete in high school is almost non-existent. You see kids just singularly focused on, one thing during their high school career, really trying to find out. So when you have such a deep pool of individuals that have such a strong talent in one area, schools are getting very competitive to recruit those kids.
I always tell parents, especially if their kid isn't an academic star, if they don't have that scholarship, I always say after high school, send them to community college for 2 years to see what you really have before you go spending 5 figures every year for the next 5, 6, maybe even 6 figures for the next 5, 6 years on your child's education.
That's correct. I think that's great advice. I totally concur. A lot of these kids are not, completely aware of what to expect in terms of managing their time, in terms of, what, the college life is really going to be like, and whether that's a reflection of kind of the millennial generation or just kind of how we're preparing them overall is a question to be debated.
I mean, if you have tools that are suited for school beyond community college, I mean, right now, if you're eligible, if you're really that student ready for the 4-year experience, what should students be doing right now to get ready for the college admissions process?
Yeah, so, one of the things at C2 that we really pride ourselves on is that we really, a mentor with each student. So that mentor is really able to illuminate to the student what college is going to be like, what you need to do to start preparing yourself in terms of outlook, time management, and how you're going to really be able to succeed once you get into school. So getting that kind of mentorship and guidance is extremely important part of, being successful post high school. And one of the sad things is that, a lot of the public high schools have really cut back on their guidance counseling as well as their college counseling, or they have, 2,000 students assigned to one counselor. And so they can't really do much to really mentally prepare a student and, get them on the right track so that they are going to be set up for success. So, that's one of the biggest things that, I see as a need, where I feel like, my company, C2, has really been able to step in. But, we're just one small player. Obviously, this is something that's affecting millions of students every year.
David Kim, what are we going to find when we log on to c2educate.com?
Well, there's a lot of great information on our website about the various standardized tests, about different types of coursework, how you can plan your 4 years of high school to really put yourself in the best chance for success for getting into the college that you want to. And you can also sign up for a free consultation and counseling session where one of our counselors can go through one-on-one with a parent and student all those choices that are out there.
You get a giant well done, and keep up the good work. Keep helping these young people and their families. David Kim, thanks for the time.
Appreciate it, Phil. Thank you.
You can find out more about C2 Education at their website. The address is c2educate.com. That's our show. Thanks for listening. Thanks to all of our guests, Amanda McGrory. And good luck in the TCS New York City Marathon, Dr. Armin Tehrani, the founder of Manhattan Orthopedic Care, and David Kim, founder of C2 Education. Visit their websites. Useful information can be found there. New York Sports and Beyond is a public affairs production of ESPN New York, 98.7 FM. Our producer is Raymond Santiago. I'm Bill Daughtry. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you back here next time with another edition of New York Sports and Beyond on 98.7 ESPN.